Hi, I'm Chad Hennings, and welcome to another episode of Wingmen Conversations. I am extremely excited for this episode of Wingmen Conversations. We have with us probably the two senior statesmen of Wingmen. We got Fernando Ospina, Nando, and we got Mikey Boy Hogg. And we'll get into that Mikey Boy probably a little bit later.
Don't feel like you have to.
Yeah, but we must, right? We must. But as you guys know, the purpose of why we're having this and doing this is for one, to hear your stories, but for you guys, I guess through your testimonies, to encourage the guys the importance of Wingmen, kind of the impact that Wingman model has had on you, and how you've taken that and impacting the kingdom of heaven for the greater glory of God. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah. So with that, whichever one of you two guys wants to kick off, just share with the guys just a couple minutes, kind of your story. We'll go with the senior statesman.
My story at the time, I'd come to Christ in '97, and things were going okay. You start slowly walking it, and then eventually you get to the point where you realize something's missing. And I needed people. I needed somebody that I could lean on, and I never had that. So I get a church small group, and it was kind of building, but I needed something a little firmer. So I start talking around, and someone tells me about this thing called Wingmen. So I ask, and somebody connected me to a guy named Mike Hogg, and he invites me. So we go to IHOP on 35, and there's only 3 people there. I turn around, and my first impression was it's a men's group. I'm expecting a men's group. So there's him and Dan sitting there, and I'm looking around IHOP wondering, that's it? But that's how our element started. Yeah. So I'm sitting there, and we sit down, the 3 of us, and now we have what I'd venture to say probably the largest element in membership there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need to talk about that one a little bit later on that.
No, but the answer is no.
But that was 97?
That was, 12, 13 years ago.
Wow. I mean, how time flies. I'm having a senior moment here. Mm-hmm. But,
Mike, well, that's when you came to know the Lord. Of course, our story goes back to, I was in the Navy, and came here for my twilight tour. And of course, you and I had a short stint together at Holloman Air Force Base, New Mexico, and I knew you had stayed here. And long story short, the gentleman that Nando referred to, Dan, his daughter and my daughter went to high school together, and Dan and I worked together out at the base, and he was the aircraft maintenance guy, and of course I was the command chaplain. Well, I got a call one night, and Dan's daughter had come down with leukemia, and I was thinking of ways to encourage her, and so that was when I reached out to you. I said, hey Chad, I don't know if you remember, we went back here at Holloman, got a buddy whose daughter has leukemia, would you come up for a visit? It would really boost her spirits. And so of course you came, and then shortly after that you invited me to come speak at Wingman. And so we were a little smaller back then. I think we had about maybe 50, 60 guys.
If that, probably.
Yeah, it was a little smaller than it is now. And little did I know that it wasn't a one-time invite. It was like, well, can you stay and do this? And back then there was a small group that was meeting in Grapevine, and I sat there and I thought, I'm sure there's a need for a group in Keller, and we had just moved and settled in Keller at that time, and the Lord just laid that on my heart that I didn't know many people. I knew Dan, and so I called Dan. I said, would you commit to this with me? And so if it's just the 2 of us, and we would call each other the night before, you coming? Yeah, I'm coming. And so
you don't sit there by yourself.
So I'm not sitting by myself with a sign, hey, welcome to Wingman. And we decided to meet at IHOP. And I would say the thing that was at the center of it was you committed to this group. And it wasn't long, Nando came, and then Rick came.
That's
and,
correct.
and
He was
then,
next.
Colonel Scharf came. And it was a group of guys that just decided we're going to commit to each other. And then, of course, Colster came, and he said, I don't like this restaurant. Let's move to something that's nicer. And then
And closer to
Keller.
everybody lived, yeah.
And so what was interesting was when we left IHOP, you remember the waitress?
Cindy.
Cindy came, and she was in tears because she knew we were wingmen, and she would bring us her prayer requests.
Yep.
And we would pray for her.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And the same thing happened at
Manny G's.
At Manny G's. They would bring us their prayer requests, and we said, sure, we'll pray with you. And it just started to meet not only our needs as a group of guys that committed to each other, but it started to kind of flow over to the people that we met with. And now we have a group at Main Street Cafe that they know we're back there, and they count on us being there.
And you know, I run into her several times, Cindy, and we'll go out to a restaurant, and she's still waitressing. And every once in a while, we'll run in, and I'll hear this, Nando, and it's her. And she'll come with big hugs, tell all the guys I said hi, stuff like that.
You know, that's just a perfect example of what walking in the kingdom of heaven is like today. It's just emanating wherever the Spirit leads, to be flexible enough to that. Now, from humble beginnings to now where you guys are at today, you have just kind of share a little bit with us about kind of how you run your element, regarding what you do, and then, but more important to that, the impact that your element has on the guys there. Because I know 12, 13, 14 years that you guys have been meeting, you've led a lot of life has happened. A lot of water's gone underneath the bridge.
Correct.
A lot of ups and downs, and life has happened. It just, without specifics, kind of just share how you guys pull together and support one another in that regard.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Take the lead on that.
Talk
I
about
have-
just kind of how the element is run, yeah.
I have the privilege of doing the email list for the group, and I send out emails every week for reminders of where we're meeting and also prayer requests and any events that occur. So I'm very intimately knowledge with this because people send me privately, but I send it out to the group. In our group, we have, in 13 years, supported divorces, a couple of very ugly divorces. We have several members that have children going through drug issues, going through other kind of issues. We had a gentleman that lost his older daughter due to drugs, and this gentleman is raising his granddaughter as their own daughter. So when his daughter died about 5 years ago, he knew to come to Wingmen. And they were expecting her to die because of the life she was living, and he asked some of us to be pallbearers. So the impact that we've had on each other's lives is now when the prayer requests go out, it doesn't, I mean, within seconds, if not, or minutes, if not seconds, you'll always have at least 4, 5, 6 guys respond to the email list, praying. So I will send something as simple as, gentlemen, we need you to get on your knees. And they come back with, done, praying for you, whatever they feel in their hearts to respond to it. The impact of that is that we know that if I had a personal issue, I'm going to have several people praying right away. So they lifted my petition to the Lord. Secondly, these guys that are so intimately close, some of them will actually call me or text me, say, what do you need? I never get, I feel for you, whatever. I get the prayer, and then I get, what do you need? Which tells me that it doesn't matter what I need, they're there. And we've done that for each other. One of them had a very ugly divorce, and he was literally talking about doing something that, I don't want to say illegal, what really wasn't the right thing to do. And we talked him down. We said, that's dumb. You're giving her all the ammunition she needs. Think about it, pray about it, and settle that part of you down. And what happened? He did. And all of a sudden, within a year or two, things worked out the way he thought they should have. But all along, we let him know, let God handle it. It's going to work better that way. And that was so contradictory to his nature. And now he has done that with other young men that are having divorce issues. He has told them, you can't do that. You have to settle down, listen to God, and it works out in the long run.
Awesome, awesome. Anything? You want to add?
A few years ago, you wrote a book on commitment, and I read it. And
You're in the Navy. You read? You
Yeah, but his issue came with crayons.
crayons
and
doing
pictures. Here's Uncle Chad. Anyway, I read the book and it challenged me. And I started to think, what is it that is driving people away from the church? And I really took it to heart, and then I said, what is it that I believe that men are lacking in their lives? When it comes to service, when it comes to their home, what is it they're lacking? And it was commitment. And that's what the Lord laid on my heart. And so when it started with reaching out and Dan holding me accountable and me holding him accountable, and then Fernando joining on, and now we got a triad. It's the commitment to each other. We count on one another. I count on Nando to remind me which building to be in every Friday, and so does every other man. We count on that. Say, oh, all right, you're up. And so during the week, if I know we're meeting in our element group, I have a devotional time. And I'm waiting, I'm counting on God to lay a message in my mind of what I'm going to share with our group. We don't have a set agenda. We know that we're going to sit together, we're going to laugh, we're going to share together, we're going to share a meal together, and then at some point I'm going to say, all right guys, this is what the Lord has for us today. And I don't teach a lesson. I share something out of the Word and I throw it out to the guys and I say, what's your thoughts? And after that, it's just a facilitation. It's not a talking head. They don't need a talking head. I'm wanting to hear what Nando has to say about that passage today. I want to hear what Rick has to say. I want to hear what Doc, of course, everybody wants to hear what Doc has to say.
Right.
Usually trumps me out. But anyway, and then I need T Square to share. What is that saying to you? And the guys understand that. And that's what makes the difference in the group is we come at it from all these different angles, and we're feeding each other on just a wealth of information of what this passage, what is the Lord bringing out of this passage, and how is that coloring and shaping our lives. And I think that, to me, that is really what makes the difference. But it starts with when the alarm goes off in the morning and I hang my feet over the side of the bed, and it's, oh, it could be so easy just to stay right here. And I know there's that spark that says, but you're committed to these guys, and they're committed to you. Get up. And without fail, I mean, sometimes Nando and I, we look at each other afterwards, and I mean, we just say, can you believe that just happened? Can you believe that God just made that happen? And then from there, I mean, it's no wonder it flows over into Snowball Express and many of the other ministries that have been touched by these guys that are leaders in their own right, taking that experience and that wealth of information that the Lord shares with us in that intimate setting out into the community.
I want to piggyback on that commitment part, Mike. That was a good point. The commitment part is crucial because you've got men that are actually changing their schedules for Wingmen. Mm-hmm. Half of our element probably, they go to work, the other half is retired, but notice that on these Friday mornings, they're there.
Yep.
To the point to where when somebody isn't there, we'll all look at each other and go, hey, where's Bobby? Oh, Bobby's flying. Mm. That's his job. He's got to be in an airplane. But other guys are like, where's he? We know he's on vacation. We actually look for each other. And that's the commitment, that everybody's there to support everybody.
You know, I think you hit on one innate thing, how God wired men. The DNA is that aspect to be a part of something greater, be a part of a team. And it takes Wingmen men to other men in our lives that you can have form those transparent, Christ-centered, masculine relationships to be fulfilled, right, yep. As men. Now, great segue into, as both you guys know, with Wingmen, with the elements, we give you guys as leaders the autonomy to, to do whatever you want. You guys kind of do a daily devotional where you throw out a topic. Some guys, do a Tim Keller book or a Bible study or whatever it might be. One criteria, Wingmen, is just that, make sure it's Christ-centered. But the second aspect is doing a work in the community. Now, you guys both have done phenomenal things. And you mentioned Snowball Express. You used to facilitate and be the director of that, and you, based on that, if you want to share that story, kind of that evolution, how it went, and then how you and how the Wingmen basically took over that organization at one point in time.
It really was an amazing transformation. Snowball is a charity that is there for the children and the survivors of our fallen heroes that have served in our armed forces since 9/11, and it's anchored by American Airlines. They bring 9 different charter jets and transport these. Well, back then they would provide the transportation to Dallas for mostly the moms and the kids. And they were, it was about the time I was retiring from the Navy, and they offered me the directorship of it. And my first job was to move the charity from Los Angeles to Dallas, which I had no idea how I was going to do that, but I said I would. And so all of a sudden, I shoulder this burden, and I'm praying about it, and then I just looked around my group. My men's group, and Chad, can you help? Yeah, I'll do whatever I have to. Nando, can you help? Sure, I'll do it. Bill, will you help? Yeah, sure, I'll do it. Kevin, will you help? Well, these guys all took major leadership roles, like organizing a hotel, organizing an airport, organizing transportation. One of them eventually became the chairman of the board and has been the longest serving chairman of the board that they've ever had. And they took over major leadership positions, which built the organization, gave it a very good foundation, and it has carried on ever since. And now it's partnered with Gary Sinise, and it has moved to his foundation. But its foundation, truth be told, came out of the commitment of Wingmen, who, other than myself, no one made a dime. They just did it because it was the right thing to do.
The one thing I like about that when you said it, Mike, is that at one point, every major portion of Snowball Express had a Wingman leading it. Mike and I talked about that. Says, wow, if Wingman ever shut down, we'd still do it, but Wingman as a group, the Snowball wouldn't be there as far as someone running it.
Yeah.
Every major department was run by one of us in our element.
Now, you guys have transitioned and moved on to other things in the community. I know, Fernando, you've done a lot of advocacy for kids, and well, you're both doing a lot of stuff for kids, for both mentoring. You and your wife, Josie, have mentored a lot of young couples.
Right.
You're working in a school, in a private Christian school, mentored a lot of young men. So, one of the aspects of Wingmen is what we're all about is discipleship. So if you maybe want to share a little bit of that.
I'd love to.
Sure.
I'd love to. One of the things that for me, as I've grown in Christ, is to leave a legacy, leave something behind that's bigger than I am. So our marriage was put together by Christ. It recovered because of Christ. So now in our church, we do marriage mentoring. We take a couple, and it's a 1-year commitment. And we do once a week, commit to a year, whatever, if it's longer than that. And we are about to start our third couple, our 3rd year of mentoring. I also advocate for CASA, which is for abused children. I was never abused, thank you, Lord. But it was such a thing that hit me as I mentored young men when my daughters were in middle school that somebody challenged me to up my game. And being a Wingman, these guys know that's my life, Snowball and the advocacy. So I'm about to enter my 7th year. And something changed, if I might add, for that. This year, for the first time, CASA's asking me to mentor the father. Wow. The young man has custody of the child, and he's a 23-year-old single dad. So they said, Nando, do you mind doing that? And I said, not a problem. So I am now not only advocating for his son, which lives with him, but I'm actually taking on the task of mentoring him to be a young dad at such a young age of 23. So those are the kind of things that knowing with Wingmen, when I need resources, I know who to go to. I know guys that help me. Even when something comes up that I say to myself, okay, I need some support, I'll pray, but I hit these guys up on the prayer list I talked about earlier, and there's the responses. You got it, Nando. We're with you, we're with you, we're with you. And that's occurred throughout the 6 years I've done mentoring so far.
Awesome. You want to share a little bit about your little home group that you have for the young men?
Oh, yes. I work at Liberty Christian School, and when I went there, I told the president at the time, I just want to be used. I just want to come here, and whatever you need me to do, I'll do. So I've got some credentials to teach, so I've taught Bible, I coach, and from what I've experienced, kids today, they don't put much stock in a talking head. Yeah, they don't want to be preached to. They don't want to be talked to. They want someone who's going to stand with them and reach and have a relationship with them. And so from coaching, and I coach weight events, and so I'm with the big heavy lifting guys, back in the pits behind where
The Clydesdale events, right?
The big ugly.
the common draft horses. Yeah.
I are one. I can relate. That's right.
So back there, I started to work with some of the guys, and it's amazing when you're just back there with a handful of guys, what you get to learn about kids and what they share with you. And so I thought, I'm going to open my home, and guys, I kind of took the Wingman model. I'm a big game hunter, as you know, so I always serve some kind of wild game, and they want to come over, and we'll have a meal together with venison or hog or something, and we'll share a meal together, and then we'll just talk about leadership issues, things from the Bible, issues that are going on around school, and how as a man of God can you respond to those things. And they respond back, and I think they just want to know somebody cares.
Yeah, exactly.
They just want to know someone cares. Yeah.
That's what resonates from you guys is you took risks. And I know there's probably a lot of guys that may be watching this that say, yeah, okay, he's a Navy chaplain. He's schooled to be able to do that. But I can't do that. I can't do that. Whether that be out of shame, out of fright, whatever the reason. What would you do? What would you tell guys to encourage them? The fulfillment that you've got from this, because you've been doing it for so long, but that you have to be able to take risks. I mean, what would you share with guys?
Chad, one of my favorite themes out of the Bible is faith versus fear, and all of us have that. You hit the nail on the head. There's 100 reasons why if Nando shouldn't do what Nando does. He could come up with 100 reasons why he shouldn't sit with some guy who's been abusive to his wife and is unemployed, and maybe he's done time in jail or whatever, and who knows, maybe they won't like him. Maybe he doesn't speak the best. He's Colombian.
Sí. Cartagena.
I can say Cartagena. Dios te bendiga.
Very good.
Thank you. But in the absence of faith, you're going to make room for fear, and you have to push back against that. So if God, the first thing I would say to anybody who's wanting to reach out and start a ministry, you can come up with 100 reasons not to do it. But all the Lord is saying is, just commit to it. I'll provide the rest. Yep. And push back. And you'll be amazed at how your faith will grow. I mean, when we started with 3 guys, we were going to be totally content for the next 20 years if it was just going to be the 3 of us. We didn't try to grow a group. We didn't say, well, Lord, make this be 12 guys so we look at... We were okay. We're going to be, if it's 3 guys committed to each other, then it's going to be 3 guys. But God had different plans. All you have to do is commit and step out in faith. And you say, well, I don't know much. You have a Bible. Flip it open, read a passage, throw it out there. And just be open to share your thoughts. Or even if you don't know, I don't know what that means. Would you know what that means? And you'll be amazed how God will show up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Always does.
For me, it's leaving a legacy, as I mentioned earlier. And the way I came about all of this is I was challenged to do something. And I've always thought that if I'm going to leave a legacy and leave an impact, we are commanded to testify. We're commanded to witness. So what went through my mind was, if I don't do this, then that little part of the world doesn't change. If I don't do this, this child, if at the time, or this couple, is not going to improve their life. So I decided that that's what you have to do. The commitment Mike was talking about, overcoming the fear, is say to myself, if I'm going to leave a legacy, I have to act on that. So by doing that, I step up and do it. Wingmen is a very easy action. You go to a corporate meeting, you go to an element meeting, and you listen, like in ours, you listen to Mike do the verse. Then all of a sudden, when Mike throws it out there, the conversation flows. If someone has an issue and what they call chasing squirrels, then you chase the squirrel, because that person obviously needed the platform that day. So that's my big deal is, once you commit, you can't leave a legacy if you don't act. So in order for your family to get better, in order for your life to get better, you start one step at a time, act, go to Wingmen. And if it's not Wingmen, another group, but get those men around you that are going to help support you and actually act in a way that you can witness and testify. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, people are looking up to you. And then you're giving it back to them. And it starts that cascade of they're giving it to someone else. And that's what we're here to do.
That's the whole thing, crawl, walk, run.
Mm-hmm.
Crawl, walk, run. Well, as we kind of wind this down, we got to touch base on the Mikey boy issue. You know, you have been...
Precious little Mikey boy.
You know, as those in the audience, you're watching this, so you've been to the website, you've seen the YouTube videos and how we videotape our speakers, and probably two of the most impactful speakers that we've had were due to you and in your network of relationships. Dr. Collins, the archaeologist, and Edie Eager.
Yeah.
And should we allow him to tell the Mikey boy story, or do you want to tell the Mikey boy story?
Oh, I'll let him tell it, but I do want to add that that's the only woman that's ever spoken at Wingman. Not that we're men only, it just that happens to
Well,
be.
she's probably has been the most impactful speaker we've had.
Incredible.
Just because of her pedigree as a survivor of Auschwitz.
Yeah.
But if you want to share just kind of how, you know, particularly on Edie's story of the impact she had on your Marines, your sailors, and you brought them in when you were active on the West Coast, and how the impact she had on Wingmen here.
One of the things that I really believed when I got here and got with Chad was I've had the opportunity to meet some remarkable people over my life. I'm active with the Medal of Honor Society. Dr. Collins I met through a very dear friend who we both worked on our doctorate degrees together. He's credited with finding the archaeological site of Sodom and Gomorrah. And then I went to a training meeting when I was stationed in San Diego, and this lady named Dr. Edith Eager was our speaker. Edie was born and raised in Hungary, and she comes from a Jewish family, and she lived there during World War II, and her entire family was taken captive by the Nazis. They arrived at Auschwitz, and immediately her parents were separated from she and her sister, and actually Edie was supposed to go with her mother, and as it turned out, her mother and her father went to the gas chamber. Something told her mother that this was wrong, and so she sent Edie to go stand in another line. And she did that, and by doing that, it saved her life. Her mom and dad were killed that day, and then Edie spent some very awful time in Auschwitz. She talks about it in her book. Well, she shared that story, and it touched me, and I made an effort to get to know Edie, and we became friends. I invited her to come to our ship, and I'm sure she is the only woman PhD to go to sea aboard a Navy warship. And immediately the captain of our ship was just taken with her. The crew, she spoke directly to them. She understood all of their issues and made a huge impact. Years later, I went through a divorce, and I was getting ready to deploy to the Middle East aboard that same ship. Edie called me to her home and said, we need to go for a walk. And I was very angry at the time. And as we walked around her neighborhood in La Jolla, she held my hand. And as I was sharing with her what was in my heart, which was pretty bad, I was very angry, she knew that in my role as command chaplain, I could not be effective with the amount of anger in me. And so I finished speaking, and she continued to hold my hand, and she said, now Michael, and she started smacking my hand. You listen to Edie, and you listen to Edie like your mama. You are my precious Mikey boy. That's where it came from.
Precious little Mikey boy.
And she told me, you choose today, and you make it your prayer every day. You ask God to not allow you to be an angry man. She actually threw a couple other words in there too. But you make it your prayer every day that you will not become an angry man, but the man that God has called you to be.
Wow.
She probably saved my life.
Yeah.
And while she was doing that, she was smacking the fire out of my hand to make sure I wouldn't forget that. And I did. That whole 6-month deployment,
Yeah.
I made that my prayer every day. And I've been precious Mikey boy ever since.
Mikey boy ever since.
And Wingmen exposed me to Edie, and I do want to share this if you don't mind. When Edie came to speak to Wingmen, I was fortunate enough the night before, I held a little reception for her at my house, and we had about 15, 20 people. My granddaughter was there, and I still remember Edie, who's a giant among men and women. She's all of 4'11". And I see this woman bending down, cupping my, at that time, 7, 8-year-old granddaughter's face and talking to her in this incredible, gentle way. And that's my biggest memory of Edie. Because Lily, now as she's growing up, I'm slowly opening up what Auschwitz and World War II was all about. Because I told her at that time, I said, that's one of the most important people Papa's ever met, and I'll explain to you about her life as you get older. But that's the memory of who Edie was.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
And is. She's still...
You know, it still is. The power of touch and the power of transparent honesty is powerful and impactful.
And she's a huge believer in Wingmen. Every time she comes to the area, she says, she's always saying, Mike, find me a group of people like Wingmen to get in front of, because I want to be used by God.
Oh, wow.
That's
Very
she
awesome.
wants to be completely emptied out with what God has put in her.
Great legacy to leave.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to share a little bit of your heart and your story with the guys. And I just want to give you, closing in a minute or so, why Wingmen? If you had to encourage somebody that was sitting in front of you today at IHOP, was coming in, what's this Wingmen stuff about? What would you say? Mike, you want to close first?
Men are not designed to be alone. We need companionship. We need affirmation. We need community. We need a purpose. And I would say, find that, pray for that in your life, and then commit to it. Commit to it, because that's where the reward comes. You want to be used by God, you want to find meaning and truth in your life, commit to that, and God will meet you on the path, promise you.
For me, remember that the King of Kings, our biggest, most incredible Christ, was a servant. And in order for you to serve and be the biggest man you can be, step out and do that. Conquer that fear, and know that when you serve others, come to Wingmen, serve others with your story. Bring what your pains you've gone to. Bring your successes. Next thing you know, you're feeding off your other Wingmen, and that's how you grow. That's how you get that network of commitments and people that affirm you through life.
Awesome, guys. Perfectly said. Guys, thank you for watching. I'm Chad Hennings. This has been Wingmen Conversations. See you next time.